You know, all those jokes about me switching to Sony finally worked. I got this baby in my hands. It's right here, guys. Fujifilm sent me a review unit so I can make this review for you guys. Let's get started. Hey guys, it's me, Iamtongue, and today I got a brand new video and it's the GFX100S review. And I just want to start off by saying I got this as a loan from Fujifilm here in Toronto. My threats about switching to Sony finally worked. Maybe I should keep doing that so they can send me the new 33mm f1.4 and the 23mm f1.4 in my hands. You hear that, Fuji? Just send me those. Just send me those lenses. Otherwise, I'm switching to Sony. Oh man. Oh fuck. Oh man, that's so stupid. I'm so fucking stupid, man. So I have had this camera with a few lenses for about 3 weeks. I've been putting it through its paces. I took this to a few studio shoots. I took this outside to shoot some, you know, landscape stuff, cityscape stuff with it. But mainly I used it to shoot portraits. And for the 90% of you guys who are watching this, I know this camera isn't for you. It's very specific and it's very niche. But if you want to hear what I gotta say, stick around and enjoy the photos shot with this camera. Now let's start with the build quality. So as I mentioned in my first impression video, I thought holding this was a bit uncomfortable. This was me holding it with the 110mm f2, but going out to multiple shoots with different studios, I can say that the discomfort that I felt is gone. Maybe it's because it's in a controlled environment where I'm not always moving around like I normally do when I go and try to photograph the city. It's also probably because I just got used to the size and handling of it after multiple shoots. I don't feel it anymore, but I can say that the best way to offset the weight is if you are shooting in a studio environment and you have like a designated area where you can put your lenses and you go there to switch things out. But if it's a run and gun situation, you may find this could be tiring to hold. As you can see right here, it's a chunky fella. It's really chunky. It feels like a DSLR, like a small DSLR. It feels good to hold right now. There's the deep hand grip right here, and I really enjoy this deep hand grip. In my first impression video, I said that, you know, this hand grip may be a little bit too big, but after multiple use, I actually gotten used to it. So if you guys are, you know, one of those people that actually felt that this hand grip was a little bit uncomfortable, just stick with it and then you'll get used to it. The EVF isn't as bright and sharp as other cameras that I've used, and once you get used to the bright EVF, it's kind of hard to go back to a camera with less resolution in the EVF. I know that the original GFX100 had double the resolution, making it a nice sharper and brighter EVF. I guess this is where Fujifilm had to cut corners to differentiate this line from its flagship. But I feel if you're paying this much for a camera, why can't you just, you know, why can't we just get it in this one too, you know? Be that as it may, I got used to it and I didn't feel that the EVF hindered me from the shoot, but it would have been nice to have. We also have these custom dials right here. This is where you can set different Fujifilm recipes and settings for both photos and videos. And there's a button on the top of the dial that locks it in place. We got this nice switch right here to switch back and forth from photos to video. And we got the back LCD screen. It tilts out like this, making it really great for getting low angle shots. There's also this bump that protrudes out, and that's really good for the thumb rest. And overall, I really like how the ergonomics of this camera is laid out. It looks modern and sleek, but it's still bigger than the X-T4. Obviously, it's not as big as the original GFX50S. This is a significant improvement from the GFX50R as well. I used to own that camera and I hated the ergonomics on that camera. It was just a huge brick. But you know, this camera solves those issues. This battery that this camera takes is the same as the Fujifilm X-T4, which I thought was a nice touch. For anyone shooting with both system, you guys can use these batteries interchangeably, which is really good if you guys are running low on spares. This battery is rated for 400 shots, but during my time with it, I actually got more. I shot over like 600 shots and still had like 1 or 2 batteries left over. Let's move on to the autofocusing. Phase detect autofocusing, and it's not the contrast detect from the old GFX50 series, which is surprisingly quick to focus. When I was shooting with the GFX100S, I find it to be very snappy and very pleasant to grab focus. There wasn't any focus pulsing that like I've experienced when I used to use my GFX50R. I shot with the 80mm f1.7 and the 110mm f2, and I do notice that these two are different at grabbing focus. So I guess it's like the Fuji X mount lenses, that it depends on the lenses that you have that will likely determine how good and snappy the autofocusing is. With my experience, I felt that the 80mm f1.7, it would be a bit slower to grab focus. It almost reminds me of my 35mm f1.4 in a way of how it would just move back and forth before it grabs focus. But with the 110mm f2, I find that the autofocusing with this thing was snappier, and I didn't have that issue where it moves back and forth before it focuses, which is really good. And the way I use this autofocusing is single point AF, just because I don't trust Fujifilm's eye tracking or face tracking. Every time you think you got the eye in focus, it would end up getting the eyelash instead, and that drives me wild. And ever since then, I just use single point. It works every time. It works a lot better than Fujifilm's eye tracking. Once you put this camera into continuous autofocusing, you're not going to get good results because it only shoots 5 frames per second. It takes a long time to buffer, and there's a lot of click glass moving back and forth. Okay, so this camera is best when everything is slow and a bit still. I wouldn't trust this on fast moving subjects. Like I said, this camera shoots 5 frames per second, and depending on what memory card you have, you may experience waiting time while it buffers. So I highly suggest you invest in some good memory cards. I use the ProGrade V90 memory card. It's a lot better than my V60. V60 cards are fine, but that's where I experienced the most stutter and lag when I had this camera the first time around. So if you want to mitigate that, get yourself some of this V90, and it's not sponsored, guys. These memory cards were expensive as fuck. I bought this with my own money. The lagging and the stutter time and the buffering time will be a lot less. I've only used this camera for photography, so I can't really touch on the video. Some of the video specs on this is crazy, man. Like 4K 30 with raw output. Like you can shoot raw with this if you had an external monitor, but I wouldn't recommend you spending a buttload of money to use this camera as your video camera. There's a lot better cameras out there in that price range that you can get. So let's move on to things I like about this camera. The image quality, like, oh my god, every time I open up these RAW files, these GFX RAW files, I am just blown away with these images. It's one of the best images I've ever seen. The colors are so rich. I really love how this camera handles skin tones. Everything about this imagery from this camera is absolutely beautiful. And I urge anyone who have not gotten a taste of that medium format life yet to just go to your local camera store and just try it out. The medium format look is so awesome. The fall off of the bokeh is just gorgeous. One of the best I've seen. It's not like this weird rendering that Fuji X cameras make, but it has a nice even transition from the eyes to the face, making it such a pleasant viewing experience. And that's one thing I miss about having a medium format camera. When I used to own the GFX50R, I was so amazed by just the roll off on a person's face when I took their portrait. It's a vibe, it's a mood. It adds such a mood to your images, and it's hard for me to recreate with a Fujifilm X camera and lenses. Try it out if you can, man. It's honestly one of the best things that you can see. Like, man, like I'm just simping over this GFX100 right now. It will make you view your cameras a bit differently afterwards. I honestly think my Fujifilm X cameras are so worthless right now after shooting with this thing for like a close to a month. It's going to be hard for me to give this thing back. The 102 megapixels are so fun to look at. Zooming in and seeing all those details, it's just freaking nuts, man. Like, I feel like I shouldn't have all this power. I can zoom in and get every fiber from a shirt, or just punch in and see every strand of facial hair. It truly amazes me, the power of the 102 megapixels. Another thing I like about having 102 megapixels is the cropping power. Now you can make so many different crops from one single images, and I see that being so useful. You can end up with a different crop, and that will tell a totally different story from the original. I've used this a few times in my shots as well. I shot it vertically and I ended up not liking the composition. So what I did was I did a 16:9 crop to a vertical shot and made it horizontal, and I still got enough megapixels to go around. The images still look sharp and crispy, and because of the new crop, I feel it has more of an impact. So I see this being one of those benefits of having 102 megapixels. And I feel like, you know, if you are someone that shoots landscape and you have 102 megapixels to work with, you want to, you know, put your images up on stock sites, you can just go in and then just make different crops of the same landscape image, and then you can just make money off of all of that images, and you know, it still has enough detail in there. Nostalgic negative film simulation is a great film simulation. The way I describe this film simulation is that it's soft and muted and also warm. I like how it turns reds into this rusty ginger amber color. I've used it on my portraits and I kind of like the look of it. Still not one of the best for my portraits. I would still use classic chrome or Astia on portraits, but overall it's a different film simulation and it has a cool, unique look to it. So I dig it if you're shooting like street photography or anything like that, landscape or like, you know, cityscape. I think it looks really, really good. And another thing I really like about this camera is the dynamic range. The dynamic range on this camera is just incredible. I just love how much shadow detail we can recover from these files and still have a clean looking image. This is my buddy Anthony over here, and as you can see in this before and after, usually when I shoot with my Fujifilm X-T4 or my XS10, the images would break down after. You see some artifacts and a little bit of noise, but this camera right here has tons of dynamic range for you guys. So you have loads of information to play with, and I just love how clean it looks. Like, you can see the before and after. Not much noise. I haven't done anything to it, put any noise reduction to it. It just looks super, super clean. I think that's one benefit of having a medium format sensor, is the dynamic range. And also, the 16-bit color depth makes the GFX RAW files such a joy to grade. I could pull the colors that I want smoothly and get results quick without spending hours trying to get it right. The colors on this baked into the RAWs is so friggin' good. You don't need to put much work into it. And for me anyways, whenever I worked with a Fuji RAW file, like, I can get the colors that I want and I don't have to put so much time into it. I remember shooting with like a Sony, a Canon, and sometimes maybe a Nikon. Like, you know, when I edit my friend's work, my friend's photo, I find that it was hard for me to get the colors that I want. It doesn't slide right with me. Like when you go in and adjust your, you know, HSL, your white balance and your tint, it never sat right with me. But with this one, it just pulls so smoothly. I can get the colors that I want without having, like, you know, any degradation to it. And that's so clutch. Like, you can see that these colors are so beautiful and so smooth, man. Like, I don't know what else to say about this. Like, it's honestly like the best image quality out there right now, man. Like, fuck. Obviously I have like Fuji bias because I shoot with Fujifilm, but like, I have tried other cameras before, but like with this camera, man, it's just, with the GFX100S, the RAW files, man, it's just so easy. It's just so easy to play with. The in-body image stabilization. The one complaint that I had with my GFX50R was there was no image stabilization in the camera, but this camera has it. And I can't tell you how great having an image stabilization is. Having shot at the Neon Studio here in Toronto many times, we need that IBIS to slow our shutter so we can allow more light to come in. From my testing, I got as low as 1.16 of a shutter speed and came out with a sharp photo. IBIS just helps with getting the photos sharp. I've never got soft images with this camera like I did with my GFX50R. So IBIS is welcome, and I love IBIS, so thanks Fujifilm for including that in there. Let's talk about things that I don't like. There's not much that I don't like about this camera, but obviously the one thing is the price. I wish it was a bit cheaper. Like, don't we all wish this camera was a bit cheaper? It's actually cheaper than the Sony A1. Like, can you believe that? That's just so mind-blowing. But again, they are just different tools for different jobs. Coming in at 7,799 Canadian dollars, this camera is mainly targeted to a specific demographic. For the rest of us, we can only dream of owning this camera one of these days. Factor in these GF lenses, which is anywhere from like $2,000 to $3,000. You are looking at close to like a $10,000 setup. That's a lot of money for anyone to spend. All of us right out there, it's either buy a car or buy this camera. You know what? Even a car is cheaper than this camera. Oh, it just depends on the car. Another thing is the uncompressed file sizes are about 200 megabytes. They will eat up your memory card very quick. And when I was shooting at multiple studios, I would fill up my memory card, 128 gigs of memory card, and it just filled up so quick. And I've never had this done with my Fuji X camera, so I was just really surprised that this happened to me not only once, but like 2-3 other times. If you shoot uncompressed, this will eat up your memory card, so make sure to bring a lot more memory card. But if I were you, I would just shoot lossless compressed to save some space. It takes up about half the size at 100 megabytes. And again, just be aware that you're working with 100 megapixel RAWs. Your computer is going to take some time to process them. I use a 2019 MacBook Pro 16-inch with an i9 with 32 gigabytes of RAM to edit my videos and photos. And every time I start editing one of these GFX RAW files, it really slows down my workflow. The fan on my laptop kicks in and it's so freaking loud. This is something that you have to consider if you're investing in a system like this. You are going to need to invest in a faster computer, a faster memory card, more hard drive space for storage, and all this comes at a cost, and this may end up being a lot more than just the original $10,000 setup. The D-pad, the directional pad, it really drives me wild. I really don't like this. Fuji needs to bring back the D-pad. This stupid joystick nipple thing right here, it feels fine. Like, it feels better than the joystick on my XS10. And this thing is rubberized and it has a little grip for it. But I can't use this when I shoot portraits, and I find it's hard to move with my focusing points around. With the D-pad, I would be able to just hard press it a few times to get to my spots. I feel this nipple thingy isn't as responsive and tactile like the D-pad. The removal of the D-pad means there's 4 less customizable button to program. Fujifilm has made the screen touch screen, so you can do swipe gestures on it, and I feel like, who uses that? No touchscreen, just give us the fucking D-pads, man. Like, oh man, I should be nicer to Fujifilm because they did lend me this. Oh god, they're not gonna send me anything ever again. Oh, so who is this camera for? Who is this camera for? It's obviously for rich people. It's obviously for working professionals. I think people who can afford this camera would already know if this camera is for them. Someone that shoots at a slower pace, someone that doesn't need that high burst frame rates, and someone who prints their images really large. Maybe I'll get this camera if my wife gives me the green light. As of right now, she told me to save my money, so that's what I'm doing. I'm not spending my money, but I could have. I want to so bad. God damn it. Maybe I'll just convince her or something. I don't know. Overall, I really enjoyed this camera. I had a fun time shooting with this camera. I really want one now, but the price is holding me back a little bit. But again, this camera isn't for people like me, rich doctors, dentists, lawyers, who has like rich enthusiasts, hobbyists, even professionals. These are for that people, all right? The people that want the ultimate image quality. The 102 megapixels is so versatile. Again, you can just crop it in so many ways, and that medium format look, man, the colors, man, just the freaking colors, the goddamn colors, man. I'm like, obviously this camera is really niche, so 90% of the people out there, they do not need this camera. but it's just so damn good. I just want one. I had a lot of fun shooting with this thing, and this is the best image quality I've ever seen from a camera. The GF lenses are stupid sharp. It's ridiculous, man. Like I said, consider this system if you're like super rich. And if you're rich, can you buy me one too? But anyways, that is it for me, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video, and I would like to give a special thanks to Fujifilm for loaning me this camera with a few lenses. Even though I'm like a small YouTuber, I appreciate you guys sending me such an expensive piece of kit. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you like my content, this is the best way to support me, just by giving it a like or giving me a subscribe button or leaving a comment. And once again, my name is Tongue, and I'll see you in the next video. I love you. Okay, bye.